This person asked if you were okay, and you answered, "I'm better." But did you notice the silence that followed? It wasn't just any better. It wasn't a knee-jerk reply. It wasn't a relief. It was a signal, an affirmation that disarmed the other person. Because when someone asks if you're okay, they expect to hear something simple, predictable, something that doesn't disturb, something that keeps the world balanced. But your better shook the foundation. It wasn't just the absence of pain, it was the presence of awareness. And that is scarier than you can imagine, because when you say you're okay, people understand. You're surviving. But when you say you're better, they realize, even if they don't quite understand, that something inside you has changed. And the truth is this: you're no longer in the same place. Do you realize that? You crossed the desert, and when you returned, you no longer spoke the same language. Those who knew you before expected you to be okay, but they weren't prepared to see you transformed, because okay is comfortable. Better exposes, okay reassures, better threatens. It's like you're saying, "I went through all of that, and still, I grew." And this, for many, is a mirror, a reflection that hurts, because it shows what the other person isn't able to live, reveals how much they're still stuck, while you've already realized you don't want to go back. Have you ever considered what lies behind that word? Better. It seems simple, but it carries memories, scars, renunciations, choices. It carries the days when you almost gave up, the nights when no one saw your tears, the internal battles you fought in silence. And the most impressive part is, you didn't get stuck in the trauma. You didn't become a hostage to what hurt you. You used pain as direction, and not as a prison. That isn't being okay. That is being better. And few can recognize this difference. Those who still live to avoid pain, you will never understand someone who has learned to grow with it. That's why your response shocked me, because better requires a different perception, and when you responded that way, you declared yourself without fear of the light you now carry. Do you realize the strength it takes to say, "I am doing better"? It's like saying, "I didn't refuse to suffer, but I refuse to be defined by my suffering." It's like showing that you didn't just wait for things to go back to normal. You created a new normal, a new way of existing. And that doesn't fit into the vocabulary of most. That's why there's silence. That's why there's the strange pause on the other side. That's why there's a surprised expression. They weren't ready for your new tone of voice. They weren't prepared to see that you have risen. You have risen, and you didn't make a fuss, you didn't shout, you didn't expose yourself. You just replied with the calm of someone who understands that growing doesn't need an audience. It needs depth, and depth is unsettling. If you've experienced this kind of silence after your response, comment, "I needed to hear that." Because growing is almost like changing languages. Those who knew you through pain don't understand your lightness. Those who got used to your weakness can't read your strength. Those who saw you broken are startled when they see wholeness. And you stopped asking for permission to evolve. That changes everything. You stopped waiting for others to understand you. You stopped wanting to shrink back to a size they can handle. You decided to move forward, even if that meant losing some connections, even if that made you incomprehensible. Do you notice that? You no longer wanted to fit into spaces that no longer accommodate your expansion. And only those who have truly improved understand this kind of solitude. Because being okay maintains social ties, but being better reorganizes everything. It's a word that uninstalls the old, that reprograms your presence, that updates your energy. And not everyone has the capacity to coexist with someone who is genuinely improving, because this requires them to make a choice. Either they grow too, or they distance themselves. And there's nothing you can do to control that. This simple response, "I'm better," was a turning point, because it didn't just communicate an emotional state. It revealed a level of awareness. It showed that you've realized that you no longer want to survive like before. You don't want a good that keeps you in limbo. You want a better that brings you closer to your own truth. And the truth is this: you are becoming someone who, even with pain still present, no longer lives from it. You feel, but you no longer define yourself by what you feel. You carry the scars, but you no longer bear the burdens. You have memories, but you no longer have chains, and this isn't a miracle. It's a movement. You recognized it and chose to keep going. How many times have you heard, "How are you?" and automatically replied, "Fine," even when you were crumbling inside? Now, you responded differently. You said you're better, Not as if you're trying to prove something, but as someone who acknowledges their own process. And that places you in a different position. You no longer need others' permission, nor external validation, because you know what you've lived. You know what you've overcome, and you know what you're still becoming. So when someone asks you again, and you say better, don't be startled by the looks or the silences. They aren't judging. They're trying to understand. But maybe they won't be able to, because those who haven't crossed over don't comprehend those who have returned. And you have returned. Does this make sense to you so far? Write yes down below. You are no longer seeking to be okay. You are seeking meaning. You are seeking presence. You are seeking perception. And that's why you're no longer satisfied with empty answers. Nor shallow relationships, nor soulless routines. You want to grow. You want to live with more depth. You want to feel with more wholeness. This is the true better. But what comes after this, what is revealed after you embrace this new awareness, is even deeper. You said you were doing better, and something changed in the air. The conversation lost its rhythm. The tone became strange. Did you notice? It wasn't meant to hurt. It wasn't due to a lack of affection. It was because your response created a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see themselves when the reflection shows exactly what has been avoided for so long. You said, "I'm better," and on the other side, without saying a word, a silent thought emerged. And me, am I? This response activated memories that the other person hasn't yet healed, wounds that are still buried, decisions that have been postponed, truths that haven't been addressed, because you showed that growth is possible, and that overcoming doesn't mean erasing, but redefining. You revealed, unintentionally, that the other could have done the same, but didn't. And when that happens, better turns into discomfort. Not because you're wrong, but because you got it right where no one else had the courage to try. Do you feel this? Some people pull away, not out of lack of love, but because they don't know how to handle your new version, because this version of you no longer asks for explanations. It doesn't need to be understood or accepted. It just exists, and that is enough. But for those who still live for approval, this freedom is a deafening scream. Those who still depend on chaos to feel alive don't understand those who have learned to be silent and find peace. And you have learned. You've already realized that you're not the same person you used to be. You no longer drag yourself through draining connections. You no longer insist on proving your worth, nor do you submit to spaces where your soul needs to hide. And this, even without words, changes everything. People can feel it. Before they hear you, they perceive it. They notice what you carry in your gaze. They notice that you no longer negotiate your peace. They notice that you're no longer trying to fit in. And when they notice, they become unsettled, because you embody what they have postponed, and no one likes to confront what they have pushed aside. You've become a presence that makes them uncomfortable, not out of arrogance, but out of coherence. You are now someone who walks lightly, even having come from heaviness, someone who smiles genuinely, even having cried inside. Someone who no longer needs to pretend to be okay, because you truly are better. And this, for many, is a reminder of what could have been done, of what can still be done, but that requires courage and sacrifice. And sometimes sacrificing is the hardest part. You know, you've lived it. You've distanced yourself from people you loved. You've stepped away from versions of yourself you wanted to save. You've distanced yourself from narratives that no longer belonged to you, and you were left alone, not out of ego, but for preservation. You understood that to improve, you would have to let go. Let go of the old, let go of the comfortable, let go of the predictable. And when you did that, you began to rebuild yourself, stone by stone, day by day, silence by silence. It wasn't pretty, nor was it quick, but it was true. And that is frightening, because the world has become accustomed to instant solutions, to ready-made answers, to empty promises. But you didn't go that route. You took the real path, the path of the soul. The path that transforms not by appearance, but by the root. Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell me in the comments. And now, you respond differently, not to impress, but because you can no longer lie to yourself. You say better with the calm of someone who knows where it hurt and isn't afraid to touch that spot anymore. Because trauma no longer controls you. The pain no longer defines you. The absence no longer commands you. You are better because you acknowledged yourself. You saw yourself in the dark, and still, you chose to light a candle. You didn't wait for the sun. You lit what was within your reach, and that has made you someone different. Someone who carries light without needing to talk about light. Someone who carries peace without needing to justify it. Someone who carries silence and yet communicates healing. And for those still trapped in their own storm, this is almost unbearable to see. That's why your response resonates so deeply. You didn't say, "I overcame." You didn't say, "It's in the past." You said, "I'm better." And that is much deeper, because better still feels, but it no longer hides. Better still has memories, but it doesn't live trapped in them. Better still has tough days, but it doesn't surrender to chaos. You understood that growth is not the absence of pain, it's the presence of meaning, and that changes everything. When you responded like this, you awakened more than curiosity. You revealed a new level of awareness, and this made the other person realize, even if subconsciously, that their good might just be a form of anesthesia, and your better is real presence. If this touched you, comment, "I needed to hear this." You didn't respond out of vanity, nor out of pride. You answered with the truth of someone who has walked through the valley, someone who has felt their soul tear apart, and yet still didn't get lost. You found an anchor within yourself. It's not that everything is perfect, it's that now you are whole. You stopped waiting for salvation and started rebuilding with what you had. You looked inside and said to yourself, "Even if everything fails, I won't fail myself." And that's when everything began to change. Do you realize this now? It was there, at the bottom, when no one else saw. It was there, without answers, without strength, without ground. It was there that you chose to continue, not because it was easy, but because stopping no longer made sense. That better that you carry didn't come from books nor from pretty phrases. It came from sleepless nights, from losses that no one valued, from silences that no one respected. It came from what no one wanted to hear, from what no one could console. And that's why he is so profound. That's why he doesn't need an explanation. He stands on his own. But there's something more, something that hasn't been said yet. Your best has not only revealed who you've become, it has also shown who others still lack the courage to be. And that's why now, some look at you with silent admiration, others with disguised fear, and others one with distance, not out of malice, but because you've become something they still don't know how to name. You said you were doing better, and without intending to, you lit a spark. Because now your presence doesn't go unnoticed, nor is your absence ignored. You've become a reference, even without trying to be an example. Not because you are perfect, but because you no longer pretend you don't feel. Because you've learned to walk with the pains without confusing yourself with them. The truth is, you haven't just overcome, you've evolved. And evolution frightens those who still believe they need to be ready to start. You started broken, you started confused, you started insecure, but you started. And that's why today, without imposing yourself, you disturb. You inspire, you activate. Your simple response, "I'm better," only was like a password. A code only those who have been through it can decipher. And now, even in silence, you emit. You emit presence. You emit truth. You emit the frequency of someone who sees themselves and accepts themselves. Someone who no longer seeks approval because they've realized that belonging to oneself is what truly frees. And gradually those around you are starting to notice. They're feeling that something has changed, that you're no longer just there for the sake of being there, that your energy now carries weight, has direction. And that causes some to pull away, but it also draws others close for the first time. People who didn't notice you now feel touched by your way of being. You've become a lighthouse, not out of vanity, but out of coherence. Because those who shine after the pain don't seek the spotlight, they seek peace. And those who are at peace don't compete, they overflow. You are someone who has already understood. Being fine is just surviving. Being better is being whole. It's about feeling everything, but choosing what guides you. It's remembering what hurt, but not letting it decide your steps. It's being in the process, and even so it being a refuge. That's why now everything around you starts to move. People who didn't hear you before start to listen. People who judged you before start to imitate. People who ignored you before start to seek you out, because your energy has changed. And when the energy changes, life itself reorganizes. But none of this would have happened if you had settled for being fine. You didn't just want to function again. You wanted to flourish. And that quiet decision you made on some dark day is what saved it all. Do you realize this? It was there when no one saw. It was there when there was only pain. It was there when the future seemed like a desert. It was there that you told yourself, I can still be much better. And you did. If this resonated with you, comment, I needed to hear this. But this is just part of the story. Click here and continue with me.